Her own mother sold fat daughter to mountain man for whiskey. He gave her a kingdom. Whiskey's worth more than that fat girl anyway. The woman slurred, slamming her glass on the table. Every head in Dusty Gulch saloon turned. The fire crackled. The piano went silent, and all eyes fixed on Maud Kincaid, a woman whose breath reeked of liquor and bitterness. In front of her sat a man as solid and still as a mountain, Elias Stonebridge, known across Arizona for his gold, his cattle, and his silence. Maud leaned forward, smirking. "You live up there alone, don't you, Stonebridge? I've got something for you. Strong arms, wide hips, eats too much but works hard. She's mine, though, not for long. Give me a barrel of whiskey, and she's yours." The saloon burst into uneasy laughter. Some men turned away. Others smirked into their glasses. Elias didn't laugh. His dark eyes flicked toward the doorway, where a young woman stood frozen in the cold cheeks, flushed red, tears glinting beneath the lamplight. Josephine Kincaid. Josie, 21 years old, round-faced and soft, wearing a patched shawl too thin for winter. Her gaze locked with Elias's for the briefest second before dropping to the floor. Maud's voice cut through the silence again. "You heard me. She's useless to me. Take her, or I'll throw her to the street." Elias's jaw tightened. He reached into his coat, dropped a heavy pouch of gold on the counter, and said evenly, "You've got your price. But hear me, Maud, you'll never lay a finger or a claim on that girl again." He stood, crossed the room, and draped his fur-lined coat around Josie's trembling shoulders. "You're coming with me," he said quietly. And just like that, in a single act of cruelty and compassion, a life was sold and saved. The air outside the saloon cut like glass. Snow drifted through the lantern light as Elias led Josie toward his wagon. Behind them, Maud's laughter echoed through the swinging doors, sharp, hollow, and cruel. Josie didn't look back. She couldn't. Elias helped her climb into the wagon, throwing a thick blanket around her shoulders. "You're safe now," he said quietly, not meeting her eyes. "No one's going to hurt you here." Josie didn't answer. Her hands trembled in her lap, raw from the cold. The reality of what had just happened pressed down on her like the fallen snow. Sold by her own mother for whiskey. She wanted to scream, to run, but where would she go? Elias climbed onto the front bench and snapped the reins. The horses started forward, hooves crunching through the frost. For a while, the only sound was wind and wood creaking under their weight. Then, after several miles, Josie finally found her voice. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "She would have spent that gold in a day." "I know," Elias said, eyes fixed on the road ahead, "but I couldn't stand by and watch it." Josie studied him in the dim light, broad-shouldered, his face weathered from years of sun and solitude. There was a heaviness about him, like he carried not just the mountain's weight, but something deeper. When the wagon reached the foothills, Elias finally spoke again. "I didn't buy you, Miss Kincaid. I took you out of hell. What happens next is up to you." Those words sank into Josie's heart like embers under snow. By dawn, they reached the Stonebridge Ranch, a vast expanse of white and gold that seemed to stretch forever. Fences dusted with frost, herds of cattle moving slow through the mist, a large log house standing proud against the mountain's rise. Josie stared in disbelief. "You live here?" Elias nodded, helping her down. "Built it myself. Took 10 years." She could smell wood smoke from the chimneys, hear the distant rush of a frozen stream. The house wasn't just a cabin, it was a kingdom carved by hand. Inside, warmth wrapped around her like a promise. The great hearth blazed, lighting walls lined with books, maps, and rifles. Furs lay draped over carved chairs, and the smell of stew lingered in the air. Elias pointed toward the staircase. "Your room's at the end of the hall. Clothes are inside the chest. Rest as long as you need. There's food on the stove." Josie blinked at him, unsure if she should speak. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked. "You don't even know me." He paused, eyes dark and steady. "Maybe not. But I've seen enough to know you didn't deserve what she did to you." Then, with a nod, he stepped back outside into the snow, leaving her alone with the warmth she'd never known. Josie stood in the silence for a long time. She ran her fingers across the polished table, the soft fur, the carved wood. Every inch of the place whispered care, work, and dignity, things her life had never given her. For the first time in years, she felt something shift deep inside her chest. Not fear, not shame, hope. When Josie awoke the next morning, the room glowed golden with sunlight slipping through the frost-lined windows. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the smell of fresh coffee and wood smoke pulled her back to reality. She was still in the mountain man's home. Downstairs, Elias was already at work. His sleeves were rolled, muscles taut beneath his worn shirt as he chopped wood beside the stove. The rhythm of his axe matched the steady crackle of fire. When he noticed her standing at the stairs, he nodded politely. "Morning. There's coffee and biscuits if you're hungry." Josie hesitated. I should be going soon. I don't want to be a burden." Elias wiped his hands and looked at her not with pity, but something gentler. "You're no burden. Roads are snowed over for miles. You'd freeze before noon. Stay until the thaw." Josie's lips parted, unsure what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like that, like her safety mattered. For the next few days, silence ruled between them, but it was a comfortable silence. Josie helped with small chores, washing dishes, mending old shirts, feeding the chickens. Elias never told her what to do. He simply let her find her place. And slowly, the tension that once knotted her shoulders began to ease. One afternoon, while Elias repaired a fence, Josie brought him water. "You work harder than anyone I've ever seen," she said shyly. He grinned faintly. "Work keeps a man honest and alive." Josie studied the endless stretch of land around the mountains rising like giants, sky as wide as mercy itself. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "It's quiet," he replied. "That's what I needed after losing everything." She looked up. "You lost someone?" Elias's expression softened. He nodded once. "My brother. The mine we dug together collapsed 6 winters ago. Gold took him, same as it took half this territory. After that, I decided the mountain would be my only company." Josie wanted to comfort him, but all she managed was a whisper. "I'm sorry." Elias shrugged. "I made peace with it. Some people come into your life to teach you strength, others to test it." His gaze flicked to her. "You seem to have had your share of both." Her throat tightened. "My mother never wanted me, said I was too soft for this world. Maybe she was right." Elias set down the hammer, the wind rustling through his dark hair. "Soft doesn't mean weak, Josie. The world needs both hands, the ones that build and the ones that heal." His words settled deep, like the first warmth of spring beneath snow. That evening, as the storm returned, they sat by the fire. Josie stirred stew on the stove while Elias tuned an old guitar. The music filled the room low, steady, beautiful. She listened, smiling for the first time in months. When the song ended, she whispered, "I didn't think people like you existed." Kind, without wanting anything in return. Elias looked into the fire. "Don't put me on a pedestal. I'm just a man who couldn't stand to see another soul broken for someone else's greed." He turned toward her. "But if kindness is rare, maybe it's worth keeping alive." Josie met his eyes and felt her pulse quicken. There was something raw and honest in him, a man untouched by vanity, whose silence spoke more than most men's promises. When the blizzard grew fierce, Elias moved to the window and checked the latch. "Storm's comin' hard. You'll sleep near the fire tonight, safer there?" Josie nodded, her cheeks warm. "Thank you for everything." Elias smiled just barely. "Don't thank me yet. Wait until spring if you still want to stay." As the wind howled outside and the fire glowed steady, Josie lay wrapped in blankets, staring into the flickering light. She realized then that the man who had bought her had given her something far rarer than gold or comfort, a reason to believe in people again. Winter on the mountain was long, cold, and merciless, but inside Elias's cabin, warmth began to take root. The days followed a quiet rhythm, morning chores, afternoon lessons, and evenings spent by the fire. Josie woke early each day to the sound of Elias chopping wood. She'd stoke the fire, prepare coffee, and watch from the window as he worked outside strong, steady, and sure-footed against the wind. He rarely spoke of himself, but everything about him told a story. The way he sharpened his tools with care, how he paused before each swing of the axe, how he never wasted a movement or a word. At first, Josie tried to repay his kindness by working harder than her hands could bear. She cleaned every room, mended every torn coat, and cooked elaborate meals from simple ingredients. One evening, when she served him a stew so thick it could feed a camp, Elias looked at her, amused. "You're working yourself to the bone," he said, setting down his spoon. "No one's asking that of you." Josie blushed. I don't want you to think I'm lazy." Elias leaned back, his gaze soft but firm. "I didn't bring you here to prove anything. This place doesn't need perfection. It just needs peace." The words silenced her, but they settled in her chest like something sacred. Days turned to weeks. Elias taught her how to ride a horse, how to aim a rifle, and how to split kindling without bruising her hands. Josie, in turn, taught him small things he'd forgotten: how to laugh without restraint, how to tell stories at dinner, how to enjoy the simple comfort of another person's presence. One evening, after they'd finished supper, Elias brought out a book of poetry. "My brother used to read this when the snow got too thick to travel," he said. His voice was low, roughened by memory. "I kept it because it was the only thing that made the silence bearable." He opened to a page and began to read aloud. His voice, deep, slow, and deliberate, filled the cabin. Josie listened, spellbound. When he finished, she asked, "Do you ever write?" Elias shook his head. "No, my life's better told in calluses than words." "Then maybe I'll write it for you," Josie said softly. He smiled. "Maybe you will." That night, long after he'd gone to bed, Josie sat by the fire and began to write in a small notebook she'd found on a shelf. The first line read, "He gave me shelter when the world threw me away." The next morning, a light snow fell soft and endless. Josie was kneading dough when Elias came in, brushing frost from his beard. "A letter came from town," he said, handing her a folded note. Her heart skipped. She hadn't expected anyone to write, but when she unfolded it, her hands trembled. It was from Maud. The letter reeked of desperation. Her mother begged for money, claiming she was dying, promising to forget the past if Josie sent help. Tears filled Josie's eyes as she read the final line, "You owe me your life, girl. Don't forget who made you." She stood frozen until Elias spoke. "What does it say?" Josie crumpled the letter. "Nothing worth keeping." Elias didn't pry. He simply took the paper from her hand, tossed it into the fire, and said, "Blood doesn't always make family." That night, Josie cried quietly, and for the first time, Elias stepped closer, not with words, but with presence. He didn't try to fix her pain. He just sat beside her, the warmth of his shoulder steady against her trembling one. When she finally looked up, he said, "You don't owe her anything, Josie. You never did. What you owe yourself is a chance to start over." From that day on, something changed between them. Their silence grew softer. Their glances lingered longer. Josie caught herself humming while she cooked. Elias, once stoic and withdrawn, began leaving small things for her, a wildflower on the table, a new pair of gloves he'd sewn himself. Spring came late that year, but when it arrived, the mountain came alive with color. Josie planted a garden, her laughter ringing through the valley. Elias watched her from the porch, a quiet smile in his beard. One evening, as the sun melted behind the peaks, he turned to her and said, "You've made this place feel alive again." Josie's heart swelled. "It was always alive, Elias. It just needed someone to see it." And for the first time in years, he reached out and took her hand. For a time, the mountain seemed untouchable, quiet, kind, and far removed from the cruelty Josie had left behind. Each morning began with golden light pouring through the windows, the smell of bread in the oven, and Elias's steady voice greeting her with, "Morning, sunshine." But peace never lasts forever on the frontier. One afternoon, while Elias was away trading supplies in town, a rider appeared at the ranch, a man in a black coat with a crooked grin. Josie saw him through the window and froze. It was Clint Barrow, the saloon owner who had once traded whiskey for her mother's debts. "Well, if it isn't Miss Kincaid," Clint drawled, dismounting. "Heard you're living high and mighty up here now. Quite an upgrade from being your mama's meal ticket." Josie stepped onto the porch, her voice shaking but firm. "You're not welcome here." Clint's eyes flicked toward the house. "Funny. That's not what your mother said. She told me this mountain man of yours bought you like livestock, and that if the sheriff found out, he'd be mighty interested." Josie's stomach turned cold. "That's a lie." Clint smirked. "Maybe, but lies sell well in town, sweetheart, especially when your mother's the one telling them." Before Josie could respond, the sound of hooves thundered from the trail Elias was back. He leapt off his horse the moment he saw Clint. "You got 10 seconds to get off my land," he said, his voice like a blade. Clint raised his hands in mock surrender. "Easy now, Stonebridge. I'm just delivering a message. Seems Maud Kincaid plans to file a complaint. Says you purchased her daughter against her will. Sheriff's already sniffing around. Thought you might want to make a deal before things get ugly." Elias stepped closer, eyes hard. "If you or that woman set foot on my land again, there won't be a deal." Clint chuckled and mounted his horse. "See you in town, king of the mountain. Maybe next time I'll bring the law with me." When he was gone, Josie could barely speak. "He's lying, Elias. I swear." Elias lifted a hand. "I know." His voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. "But lies travel faster than truth, Josie, and sometimes they kill slower." That night the fire burned low and silence pressed heavy between them. Josie sat at the table twisting her hands. "Maybe I should leave," she whispered. "If I go, they'll stop coming after you." Elias turned sharply. "Don't you ever say that." She flinched. He softened his tone. "You didn't bring this trouble. She did. And I won't let her poison what we've built here." But the next morning, a letter arrived from town, an official summons. The sheriff demanded Elias appear in court within 2 weeks to answer accusations of unlawful captivity and property misconduct. Josie's heart sank as Elias read it. "They think you own me," she said bitterly. Elias folded the letter. "Then we'll show them the truth." Over the next few days, Josie refused to stay silent. She gathered everything she had, the old contract Maud had signed, the note Elias had written that night. She is free to go at any time. And even the testimony of ranch hands who had seen her, treated as an equal, not a servant. When Elias left for town to deliver the papers, Josie felt the weight of every choice she'd made. She watched him ride down the trail, a dark figure against the pale dawn, and whispered, "Please come back." 3 days later, he did bruised, exhausted, but triumphant. "It's over," he said, stepping down from his horse. "The judge threw it out. Your mother tried to sell her story to the papers, but the sheriff caught her lying under oath. She's gone, Josie for good." Josie's knees gave out. Elias caught her before she fell, pulling her close. She sobbed against his chest, and for the first time he held her without hesitation. "She can't hurt you any more," he murmured. "You're free now, truly free." Josie looked up at him through her tears. "No, Elias, we're free." Outside, the wind swept over the mountain, not cold, but alive, as if the land itself exhaled with relief. Freedom never comes without one last fight. A week after Elias returned from town, calm seemed to settle again over the ranch. Josie tended to the garden, the air rich with pine and thawing earth. The snow line was shrinking, streams running loud with meltwater. Everything about the mountain whispered renewal except for the unease that still lingered in Elias's eyes. That afternoon, while Josie was bringing in laundry, the echo of hooves shattered the peace. She turned, and her breath caught. Maud Kincaid rode up the hill, flanked by Clint Barrow and 2 armed men. Her mother looked worse than before, hollow cheeks, wild eyes, and a bottle swinging from her saddle. "You thought you could erase me, girl?" Maud shouted, dismounting. "You think you're better than me now, living like some fine lady up here?" Josie's voice trembled, but held steady. "You should leave, Maud. You don't belong here." Maud sneered. "Oh, I belong to every man who'll pay for what I've got, same as you. Don't act righteous with me. That mountain man of yours bought you, same as I sold you." Elias stepped out from the barn, rifle in hand, but muzzle low. His voice was a growl. "You've had your say. Turn around and go before I forget what mercy is." Clint smirked. "Now hold on, Merrick. No need for blood. We're just here for what's owed. The lady's mother made a deal after all. You want to keep her? Pay again." Josie's stomach twisted. She stepped in front of Elias. "He owes you nothing. You've both taken enough." Maud's laughter cracked through the air. "You think you can talk like that to me, girl?" She pulled a pistol from her coat, trembling hands, but real steel. "I gave you life, and I'll take it back." Before she could aim, Elias moved. His rifle roared, the shot splitting the air. The gun flew from Maud's hand, clattering into the snow. Clint's men froze, stunned, unsure whether to draw or flee. "Pick her up," Elias ordered, voice low and deadly, "and take her off my mountain before she meets a worse fate." The men obeyed. Maud, sobbing and cursing, was hauled back onto her horse. Clint, pale and shaken, spat into the dirt. "You'll regret this, Stonebridge." "Maybe," Elias said coldly, "but not today." When they were gone, the silence was immense, broken only by the wind and Josie's uneven breathing. Elias turned to her, face drawn with regret. "I'm sorry you had to see that." Josie shook her head. "No, I needed to. I needed to know I wasn't her anymore." He reached for her hand, rough fingers brushing hers gently. "You never were. You've built something good here, something neither of us should ever let go." For the first time, Josie felt no fear of her past, no shadow of shame. Only the man standing before her, the home they had built, and the future stretching wide as the valley below. Spring came fully to the mountains, washing away the last traces of snow and sorrow. The land shimmered with new life, wildflowers climbing the slopes, streams singing through the valleys. In that blooming silence, Josie and Elias began again. They rebuilt the fence where the gunfire had split the post, planted new saplings where the storm had taken trees. Every act of work became a quiet vow we will keep building, no matter what the world tried to break. One evening, as dusk poured gold across the peaks, Josie stood on the porch watching the sky blush into violet. Elias came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist. His voice was low, almost reverent. "I used to think this mountain was mine," he murmured. "All the land, the gold, the fences, but I was wrong. It was waiting for you." Josie turned, her eyes shining in the fading light. "You gave me a kingdom," she said softly. "But more than that, you gave me back myself." Elias smiled, that small, rare smile that made the years of solitude fade from his face. "Then we'll rule it together." Inside, the fire burned steady. On the mantel sat the worn notebook Josie had been writing in since that first winter, pages filled with stories of survival, forgiveness, and love carved from ice. She titled it, "The Kingdom of the Mountain Woman." Outside, the night fell gentle and endless. The world beyond still held cruelty, greed, and sorrow, but up here, on this mountain built by their own hands, there was peace. And sometimes Josie thought that was enough of a miracle to last a lifetime. Some stories remind us that redemption doesn't arrive in grand gestures, it comes quietly, in the hands that rebuild, in the hearts that choose kindness after cruelty. Josie was sold for whiskey, abandoned by blood, and forgotten by the world. Yet, on a lonely mountain, she found a man who gave her not pity, but partnership and a kingdom made of trust. If you're listening to this tonight, tell me, where in the world are you hearing from? And if you still believe that love can grow even from ruin, stay close. The next story is waiting for you.